Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if it's because they always seem to throw me back when I jump in. You know? It's always like.
It's like Iggy Pop guys. It's Iggy Pop guys. It's on the planet of work.
Yeah.
It's working on it. It's good.
It's been unusual to do like 3 hours. How do you think about that? Play like 9 days
Well,
how long do you think?
You do it every night that way?
yeah, this is about 34, you know, out of 80, I think. You know? Yeah. We don't, there's been some that are longer than this, you know? Tonight, this was like the basic set, you know? It's like,
sample.
you know, and it's the main reason I think is that we play all by ourselves. We don't have an opening act, you know. And kid only sees you once a year, you know. This is his night, you know. He's got his money. He comes down. He sees you maybe one time this year, you know. So the crazy ones, they follow you around, you know. But like, and there's a lot of songs that I think that, you know, kid comes. I know when I go to a show, there's always songs I want to hear, you know. Like I say, oh man, I wish he played this, or I wish he'd play that. So we try to play them, you know. So, you know, and then we play a lot of the new stuff. We do a lot of the new album, you know, and you know, it just the time of the set, it just settled. I didn't specifically say, well, I want to play this long, or I want to play this short. You know, it's just something like when people come down, you know, give me my voice or something. You know?
That's why you play Fever.
Oh yeah, we played that tonight. This is the first time we've ever played that song, you know.
How did it get to you?
Well, having people bothered me so much for it, because it was like, it was a demo, like a bootleg that we recorded, I think 5 minutes during 1972 or 73. And it got out to the radio station. And down south here, it got popular, you know, not as much up in the east, but down south here, it got real popular, and I'd never played. So this tour we played it a lot, you know. Last 3 nights we played it. I don't know what it is, everybody, you know, it was like sort of like a throwaway song, you know, it goes real fast and just do it up. Yeah, I guess that was it, you know, like a lot of people just got played a lot on the radio station. You guys are full of questions.
You missed it. They were playing frisbee. They hit Steve in the head. They hit Miami Steve in the head. They only hit Max once. At which point I confiscated it because their energy was spent and they were trying to destroy the band one by one.
You guys are worse off than me.
And now they're just sitting here exhausted from jumping around this place with a frisbee. Cards are great.
What do you guys talk about, like, your
Was there a reaction? It's like, was there any reaction, you know?
They released
We played in Holland, we played in Sweden, and we played in England twice, you know? That's about as much as we've gotten over there, you know? But, we had a really good time over there.
What about England?
Roy said something very interesting at one point about the audience.
Oh yeah, the whole thing is I've never seen an audience act with any other artists the way they do with you. I mean, they're very respectful, and I should imagine that everybody that comes to your gig is somebody that bought your album, because it's a total identification between you and the audience.
Yes.
I mean, you walk through the audience, you could have probably walked out that way without getting trampled on.
You know, they're pretty good. It's like, it's a funny thing. I don't know how exactly what dictates the particular mode of, you know, concert behavior or whatever, you know. But I never had any trouble. I've never had any, like, I've always, I've been doing that for quite a while, you know, and it just makes it easier for everybody, you know. It's better than, like, sometimes they rush the stage in the first few songs and you gotta get them to sit down, and they sit down, and it's like they're just real, there's a certain, I think, a certain one-on-one thing that happens more than in most concerts, you know. Because I know, like, when I think of the audience, I think of them in two terms. I think of them, there's a crowd personality, but there's also, you know, I think I look at this kid as I walk, you know, before we play, I walk all around. You know, where it's going to be too loud here, it's going to blow. Got the suicide seats up front, you know, in front of the speakers. And, I don't know what it is.
But they listen, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nobody else I've ever seen able to do, you know, when you do the goddamn guitar rap.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a long, very long story.
Yeah.
You're not sort of getting people sort of yelling out, get on with it, or rock and roll, or anything. Just people are listening to it.
Yeah, I figured they'd fall asleep about through half of it. That's why they're so quiet.
You feel like the crowd is different from 2 years ago when you played in Beacon Hall? You feel like you're coming from the same kind of people?
Yeah, it hasn't changed that much, you know. It's like even when you go into to do the bigger places, which we've done a few of, it's the general mode of the crowd has been, you know, stays within a certain range, you know. I mean, it's like there's not people like getting blown up and, you know, in the first row, and there's not guys, you know, on each other, and there's a certain, it's like it's a real, I don't know, it's funny because it's a real, it's an excited crowd. Like there's a focus, there's an energy focus. And I think it keeps people from, like, you know, it's like a lot of times they come to the show to see the show. They don't come, like, you know, to get drugged out, or, you know, knock the guy next to them, or throw fire bombs or whatever, you know. I think that there's the focus, there's a real focus in the, you know, there's a certain mood that goes through the room no matter how big it is. Like we've, you know, crowds have all been real good. This is the best reception we've got since we started, you know, all this tour.
What about when you play in small places? What about the reaction of people?
It depends. Sometimes where I notice a reaction different is if you play in a nice place. It's usually more laid back. Like we play, like every time I go into a real nice theater, like a brand new one, I go, uh-oh, trouble tonight, because they got the reclining seats, you know, and they get down there and they get in them seats, boy, and it's like, it's so nice that, you know, if they don't want to, I guess, offend you or something by applauding too loud or something, but it's like, it's funny. It's like the nicest, like last tour, the end of the last tour, we were doing like some gymnasiums at colleges. Some of the best shows were like in the gyms, in the places where you wouldn't think the sound would be that good, in like the old, musty old halls, you know, places that have been like trashed and rocked out a few times, you know, like the newer places. I think sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes they maybe people, you know, but like we just played the Roxy, which was about 500 seats, and it was the same kind of, you know, reaction, you know, same kind of thing.
Was that a problem for you? Would you like to go back to play sleazy bars again instead of those big, nice places?
When I get in the mood to play like sleazy bars, I just go and play. You know? It's like play either in Asbury or like. I was just in California, and I met Gary Busey, who was in the Buddy Holly story, and he took me way outside of town to some, used to be a Pony Express office, but it turned into a bar. It fit about 70 people, and like we played, it was in between, it's funny, it was in between the Forum and the Roxy. The night off, we went outside of town to this little place. And he played some Holly songs, and he played some Chuck Berry stuff, and you know, I just go and do it. You know, just that's always easy to do, you know, and it's fun. It's fun to get back and do that, you know. Like, it doesn't necessarily play one place don't mean you can't play another place, you know.
You feel that you're able to sustain that intimacy of playing in a big stadium. I mean, you seem to reach everybody in this place right to the back of the hall. You know, if you've got, say, 200 rows, is that, you're saying your vision, does it get a bit blurred then?
You got to think about it, because I notice what a lot of people do, and it's just something that you can fall into doing, is you play to who you can see, you know? And like, that's a mistake, because there's a lot more people out there in the dark that you can't see.
That's where a lot of bands fail.
That are out there, you know? And like, I'm always conscious that, like, I look at the interviews, like, look at it, the seats go way up here. Now, just because you can't maybe see them, you know, like, they're up there.
Yeah.
And like,
but you know, a big PA doesn't compensate for that even, does it?
No, it's got to be.
Yeah.
It's a certain kind of mental kind of thing, which is funny. That's what connects. Like, I've gone in the halls where sound was good. I was one place in St. Louis I was really worried about. It was the only really tough hall that we had sound-wise. And I just get twice as determined, and I'm always thinking that, like, you have to be conscious that if there's 100 rows, that there's people in the 100th row, and that you have to play to them. You know, like, I'm always watching, trying to see if people are standing up in front of other people, if people are, you know, I try to watch what's going on so I can, you know, control it so it's as good for everybody as much as possible, you know. And like, what I do is, like, I realize is, like, this balcony's like tonight, like, there's people up there, there's people all over, there's guys in the big places. It's funny, I remember the lights will come on sometimes in a big place, and you wave to somebody in the last row, and you know that they know that you were waving, like, at them, you know. Like, they'll wave back, or, you know, do something, or, you know. And it's funny how, because this is something that I got into, it's funny how direct you can actually be, you know, because, like, usually you think you wave in a direction and, like, 100 people, you know, all the people in that, but it's not so. Like, if you wave in a specific direction or something, and you zero in, there's actually just a small, very small amount of people that know that you're coming at them, you know. So it's just a certain conscious thing, you know. You just play to who's out there, not just like if you can see the first 5 rows or something, you know, you can see the reaction here. You gotta really be thinking about it, because it makes a big difference, you know.
But also nice, it makes a difference for the band, because the band don't drop any noticeable clinkers on stage. There's a sort of enthusiasm, motivation that drives the whole band on. And
yes.
I mean, in fact, you're just a member of the E Street Band on stage.
Yeah, the band thing is, there's no, you know, everybody has been there for, like, quite a while, you know.
I can understand why they stay.
You know, and there's been, you know, when I first got them in the band, you know, it was like, even the newest guys, when they were on Max, I think we were making like $75 a week or something. And I said, if you come here for the money, forget it, because you know, it's not going to happen, you know. If you really like this music and you want to play a whole lot, then and all I want is everything you got, you know. And they said, okay. And they come through all the time, you know. They don't, they play their hearts out every night. They're really good.
Have that reaction had that reaction from the public.
Well, two things affect the way you play. One is the feedback from the crowd. The other one is simply how well you play. You know, like if the band is playing real good, you know, I've gone out in front of crowds that were just more laid back for one reason or another. They're not even they're not like they're just laying back, you know. And like I know if we're playing real good, and like if we're playing good, then I know like we're doing what we do, and that's fine, you know. It's like, and plus sometimes it's because you get very determined. I get very determined to elicit just to make that connection if it's not being made, you know. I try to think, well, why not? And, is it something I'm doing or what, you know? So,
yeah, but you've taken it, I mean, what I saw tonight, you've taken it beyond a rock and roll concert. It's not a rock and roll concert. It's
a marathon.
No, it's very theatrical, but in the right way. It's not as though you're using devices to sell it. I mean, it's just, I mean, even the band. I mean, you're using Clem, not as a sax player, using the sort of cheerleader, because when he goes up there, isn't it? I mean, it's all gone beyond, it has actually gone beyond a straight rock and roll set. I mean, that wasn't, it is rock and roll, but it's a whole new style of rock and roll you've come up with.
Yes, you know, it's like, I don't think about it that much, you know. It's just sort of something that evolved. And, we get influences I never just influenced by, you know.
Yeah, but what you've done, I mean, I made a note here. I mean, the whole thing is, a lot of people erroneously compared you with Dylan when you first came out. If there's any sort of genetic link, it's Chuck Berry, because what you're really singing about is streets, cars, love, and growing up in the 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the pure essence of what Chuck Berry was about years ago. You're just saying it a different way. The band's playing it a different way. It's the same thing.
I don't think about it a whole lot. You know, it's like it's sort of like there's a lot by those. Actually, when I first started playing, those were my two biggest influences. I think people used to ask me. I think I used to say Chuck Berry.
But your vision, Chuck Berry's vision of what rock and roll thing was 4 o'clock when school was out, Saturday night. You've taken it a lot further. You've sort of taken it, there's no set barrier, it goes beyond the block. And you're trying to give, you know, there's kids that are listening and thinking, well, can I sort of move to another neighborhood? Can I move into the world? How do I do it? Am I going to fall flat on my face? And you're sort of saying, well, it's tough, but try, I'm trying. And it's almost as though the kids and you are actually, when you're just mirroring their feelings out there. And I've noticed in your albums, personally, that vision has got more extended as you've moved out of New York and out of California and moved around the country. It's relating more to the kid.
You know, it's like that was a big difference in the album because they were less, especially this album, it was much less urban, you know, type thing. You know, it was.
But I mean, you're not too. I mean, the thing, you're not really sort of too optimistic. There's sort of that self-doubt that, well, things can go wrong, but if you strive at it, it might just turn out right. That's the thing that it's very romantic in this stuff. It's almost like those American international films in the 50s, the small town where somebody's trying to break out of the confines and find themselves.
You know, well, you're doing great. I think you should do this.
No, I mean, because you know, listen to the music. I mean, I understand what the fourth album's about now. And so seeing it. I mean, the whole thing is that you're trying to instill in people a sense of confidence, and you were getting it yourself. I mean, every one of those kids that came in tonight knew exactly what you were singing about, and knew the psychological motivation for singing them.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where, like, if you follow the albums along, there's We're Born to Run, I think, had a certain romantic kind of optimism.
But it's almost that sort of energy burst all the time. You know, you're running at first, you're not sure which way you're going, and as you get older, you see a bit more of life. And this is what's happening in your... I mean, I feel that your fourth album, a lot of people said it would be a good first album. It is a first album, because the first album is a totally new thing for you. I mean, the worst thing you could have done is try to follow up on an album like Born to Run. It's a totally different chapter in your life. And it's sort of, I'm easing myself back in, because Tony Bramwell played me a load of tapes that he'd been doing during the break, and a lot of those were sort of very up-tempo. This one is slightly, well, I'm starting back out on the road again, I'm getting back into life again, getting back to communicating with you, and this is, you know, what's happening.
What do you think of the production of your album? I mean, like, it's so different on stage than on the albums. I mean, don't you feel like there's less violence in the albums like on the stage, and less intensity?
In the albums, I don't see. Well, I think what you get is the stage thing tends to be raw, you know, much rawer. And it's funny too, because on the album there was Darkness on the Edge of Town, that was recorded live in the studio. Something in the Night, that was recorded live in the studio. So it's essentially, this was the same band. We were all in there. We were all playing it the way we play it, on stage.
I mean, even the sound is really different.
Well, that's just, I don't know exactly. I think it's something that they're two very different things. A live show and a studio thing. Like I always, especially during the Born to Run time, I always separated them a lot in my mind. On this album, I didn't separate them quite as much, but and I was going for a liver sound, less overdub sound, less, a little less controlled sound than I was on the Born to Run, But it is still a big difference because I heard somebody had a live tape we did the other day, Prove It All Night, and it's night and day, It's like,
yeah, really.
It's a big difference, But, I guess, I'd settle that and do a live album or something.
Getting back to this theatrical thing, I mean, it's almost as though you've got this big scenario and the music is like your own soundtrack to it. It's typical radio music because when you play the intro, it's sort of like, hey kid, remember this one? Like when you'd get around, I mean, you've created your own sort of classic rock and roll riffs that you've learned from listening to other people. It's sort of, if you were going to play like Satisfaction, hey, remember this one, kid, but instead you play Born to Run.
Right.
And then in the first sort of verse, and the music completely sets the scene of what that song's all about.
Well, it was like when I was writing the songs, I was thinking, gee, what did I like about the older songs or something, and the immediate identification.
But you paint the picture straight away, though. I mean, you just sort of outline it. This is on the outskirts of town. We've got a motorbike or a car. There's this girl with me. And it's straight away, you don't have to get into 3 or 4 verses to understand what the song's about. It's straight in there.
On this album, even more so, I tried to...
I mean, do you sort of paint a mental picture in your head of a scene before you actually...
Before, like, the...
write the song?
No, usually it's more sort of an intuitive kind of thing,
Yeah.
I'll have a feeling, maybe, like in Darkness on the Edge of Town or something. I'd have a particular feeling. I'd have like a first line, still racing out of the traces, but I wouldn't really... It's sort of go where the song goes, And,
I mean, your stuff, it's very intimate with the listener. There's a lot of, it's not claustrophobic, there's a lot of open spaces in it. It's sort of, you can listen to it and breathe. You're not sort of hemmed in by sort of maybe despair or, things aren't going right. There's always sort of a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, it's not negative, this stuff.
No, I never meant it to be that, It was like, even with the new album, which got interpreted by a lot of people as being sort of pessimistic, which it was funny because I never, all the while I was in the studio, one thing I was sure about was that's not what it was about for me, It was about like, it was the kind of thing, it was simple as this, it's like every day there's people trying to hold on to what people try to beat out of you,
Yeah, well that comes through.
And that's sort of the idea. That's the main thing that the characters on that album are doing,
I mean, it's almost the kid can go, say the kid's having a hard time in his life, he can go away and say, well, it's working for him, maybe it will work for me. You make people think about their own situation. Do you feel that maybe the more you get successful, it'll be harder to relate, or will you just sort of say to kids, well, look, this is what's happening, this is what can happen? It's
the kind of thing
when you're so intimate with your listener.
People make the mistake of thinking that physical things are what what make people lose contact or get contact. And I guess maybe with some people they can be distracted by it, like if all of a sudden there's money or they have a car they didn't have it before. But from the very beginning when I first started, I was playing for like different stakes, like that stuff. That's like that's the booby prizes, Every rock star gets fucking limo or whatever, you know. But that's the fucking movie prize, you know. That's the joke. That's the joke's on you, you know. And if you settle for that, then you like, you know, you just might as well, you know, you throw it all away, you know. And I always thought that, you know, you win it or lose it, you know, inside, you know, and like.
I mean, you've got your own sort of assessment of what is success.
Yeah, you know, like I know what's important to me, you know, and like I know if I go out there and I don't do what I think I should do, no matter what I ride home in that night, I'm not going to sleep when I get in bed, you know.
But you make a very heavy commitment to the audience. The audience makes a very heavy commitment back to you. I mean, the thing is that they, even down the front, they'll sort of, you fall in the audience, they'll push you back. And it's sort of like if you're in a crowd and you fall into them like that, there is a kindredship there that I haven't ever seen at a concert before there. I mean, I can understand why you don't have a support band. The worst thing you could do is to use a support band, because as soon as you go on stage, you want that particular atmosphere set for the whole night, and another band could do a totally different atmosphere.
You know, it's the thing with, there's a real, I think the kids, they know what you're giving and how you're giving it, and they think that they respond like.
What I noticed as well, what you were doing is basically taking a club set into a hall. The two sets where you go off, have a beer, change your shirt, and you stick the jukebox on. So I listened to what was on the PA over there. It was just the same. When it comes off, your favourite band comes off, you just go and put the jukebox onto your favourite records. So the atmosphere, I noticed, was maintained.
Yeah,
sweet soul music and all those things going on.
It's more like this is more like a bar kind of set, you know. The only difference is that I don't know how. I guess each set's an hour and a half.
Yeah, but you don't have to sort of. You're not really going on and following yourself. You put the jukebox on, sort of thing, and it's right. We've got a clean shirt on. We've had a towel down. Come on, these are the other songs.
Yeah,
you might
come
know.
back and do instrumental, and you know, it's like it's good because it gives you a chance to do things that otherwise you couldn't do, and it gives people, makes them relaxed. You know, makes them know like you're not going to run off stage, and in the next 10 minutes you're gonna. You know that you're like you come to town and you settle in to stay for a while, you know, and it lets down some of that panicky or some of that feeling that I think leads to chaos or something.
I mean, the audience, I mean, the whole thing was, I mean, even when you did 2:45, which for most of these kids out there is a brand new song, they've never heard the original, and getting the response back.
Oh yeah.
So I've noticed in your songs as well, women seem to play an important part. There's always some girl in the background that you're either sharing the song with. She might be actually named, defined, or sometimes she could just be. I mean, how important are women in your life? You're not very, I'll tell you something, you're not chauvinistic in your lyrics at all. You treat your ladies very, very nice in songs. But it seems that maybe they don't always treat you the same way back.
I don't know, it's hard. I think it's any time that you have something that is a devotion, you know, where it's like more than a job, you know. It's hard to be, I don't think you can be devoted to too many things, you know. Like I have a hard enough time, you know, doing this one thing, you know. And
I mean, do women either help or distract?
It's cut both ways, you know. It's like sometimes, you know, it's a big help. Other times, you know, everybody has arguments, you know.
But it seems to me that, you know, you can tell, but even with some of the songs, that it is a different girl there. Whether she's just there as a one-night stand or whether or not, I mean, she does seem to get treated quite nicely. Whether it's repaid in kind,
Yeah,
one is left in doubt sometimes.
I don't look on it's, you know.
I mean, you don't have contemporary women in your songs like a lot of. They're not. You don't treat them as sex objects.
No, I don't generally. I don't operate on that level too much. It's like too romantic, I think, you know, to do that. But
yeah, but there's a lot of romanticism in your songs, though, isn't it?
I'm going to have to cut you short after one more question.
It's like it's hard to figure because somebody, you know, asked me a similar question. Asked me why the characters were so. Darkness on the Edge of Town, it was such isolation a lot of time. And in Darkness on the Edge of Town, I think that's one of the first times where, in the end, the guy ends up by himself, you know. And it's, I don't know how it all fits together. I guess it sort of mirrors what I go through myself, you know. And there seemed to always be sort of a side thing, you know. It's like, it's a drag because, like, you have a girlfriend, and when you make a record, that's the end of that, you know. And because there's certain things that I'm real hard to be with. I'm real uncompromising about, you know, a lot of things. And I'm not at an age where I want to compromise on it yet, you know. Like, I'm at a place where, like, this is one thing that matters to me, you know. And it's I'm fanatical about it in a almost crazy kind of way, you know. And sort of, you know, surrendered to that particular thing, you
Prisoner
know.
of rock and roll.
Yeah, and but I still have girlfriends and stuff, you know.
But I want to, let me see, does any tape? Can I just turn this over just for a minute?